Okay, everyone. 4:15. Thank you all for coming. Great turnout, actually, at the end of the day. I think there's one more talk after this, but we're nearly at the end of the open house session. So I'll try and talk for maybe 20-25 minutes, and then we can have some Q&A. I think the next talk is at 5 o'clock, so we have to finish before then, whatever. Anyway, thank you all for turning up. It's really nice to see so many people. One or two mums and dads, mostly prospective students. I guess I'd like to start by emphasizing the importance of the choice that you're going to make. All of you are coming into FASS, I think, pretty much. You know that much, but you may not know what you want to study. I would urge you, not just on behalf of political science, but on behalf of all the departments, to pick something you really want to study. This sounds kind of so lame-brained and obvious, it's maybe almost not worth saying, but actually, one of the things we always deal with at open days and open house is people asking questions like, what kind of job can I get if I do X degree? And of course, at some point in your life, you will have to get a job. There is this reality we have to confront, but my main reassurance to you would be not to worry at this stage about employment prospects. In actual fact, our graduates from political science tend to go on to very good jobs. In the last few years, we've had students get jobs at places like Google, PayPal. One of my graduate students went on to The Economist. I know somebody else who ended up at the Straits Times. We've got somebody in the Prime Minister's office, and so on and so on. So you can definitely graduate from the political science department and go on and get a very good job. But that should not be why you're studying political science or whatever else you're studying. You have to do 3 years of your chosen subject. You have to suck up an awful lot of whatever it is you've fixed on. So you'd better like it, because otherwise it's going to be a very long 3 years. If you stay and do honours, that's going to be an even longer period. That's 4 years of your life. So I would really urge you, go with what your heart is telling you. And it's also, we find it's not always mums and dads who are pushing their kids to get the degree where they think they can get the best job. Sometimes I get confronted by worried 17-year-olds telling me, please tell me what job I can get with this. To which my only response is, relax, kid, you will get a job. Okay, so please, don't base your degree decision on your idea about your employment prospects, particularly if you're not sure what it is you want to do. Maybe there are a few people out here who've got a really, really fixed idea of what they want to do for a living. But most of you don't and won't, and frankly at 18 you shouldn't, or 20, however you are, however old you are. Guys maybe a little bit older, coming out of NS. But even at 20 years old, it's quite okay not to know what you want to do. And the best thing you can do for yourselves is to study what you want to study. That way, you'll enjoy what you do, you work hard at it, you succeed, and you'll get a good degree, and the good job will follow. So don't put the cart before the horse, as it were. Please base your degree choice on something you really want to do, whether that's political science or not. So I really just wanted to get that off my chest, because people need reassuring that they're not ruining their prospects by choosing their degree subject. But from our point of view, we want to teach students who want to learn. University is a bit different to school. Okay, at school, your teachers teach you what their teachers taught them. But at university, you're being taught by people who are actively making the subject themselves. You're being taught by people who are actively researching. Okay, and that's a very different kind of experience. It means you're in direct contact with people who are at the coalface, at the frontier of whatever discipline that is that they're studying. And that makes that a really unique experience for you. It may be the only time in your life where you get to be really nose to nose with people who are possibly world experts in their field. So it's a really important choice for you as to what you do, and you should do what you want to do, not what you feel you ought to do, but what you want to do. Anyway, if, as I hope you all will, you come and study with us, we have a program that's broken up into 4 main areas. So I'll talk a little bit about each of those in turn. We have a comparative politics field. We have an international relations field. We have a governance and public policy field. And we have a political theory field. Before you get to do any of that stuff, though, we ask you to take some more general options, okay? So we roll out the welcome mat for you. Every department in the faculty will ask you to take a 101 and some introductory courses. We have our own way of setting up the introductory modules. So I'll talk a little bit about quite what we want you to do for an introduction in a minute. I just want to talk in an even more general way first about what political science is, how we even conceive of the subject. I suppose before we can even get to that question, we need to say something about what politics is. This is a vexed question. You'll spend some of your 4 years, or 3 or 4 years in political science, trying to ask the question, what do we mean by politics? One way of thinking about that is, well, we've all got to live together as a society. We need some rules. Politics is basically deciding on the rules, and law is making the rules, legislating them, and then you've got to enforce them, of course. You have policy, you have executive government, and so on. The politics part is the kind of arguing part, the debating part. Of course, in a very broad sense, politics goes on everywhere all the time. There's office politics, okay? But we tend to focus more in political science on kind of government and, if you like, formal politics. This isn't totally true, it's a bit of a generalization, but that's what we're kind of looking at. The official debates over how rules get made and their wider social implications. I don't want you to think we just talk about parliaments and politicians all the time, that's not right. But what about the science part? How sciencey is political science? This is probably something, if you're an artsy kind of person, you like languages, you like literature, you like history, you may find the sciencey bit a bit off-putting. Is it all test tubes? Is it that kind of science? Well, no. This is clearly social science, okay? And it's a science in the sense that we're teaching you to be critical, to be skeptical, beware of false claims. The first thing you will learn to say as a political science student when somebody makes some claim or other will be, oh yeah, prove it, okay? So it's a critical discipline, it's an argumentative discipline, it's an evidence-based discipline. In that sense, it's a science. It is even a science in an experimental way. Political scientists do experiments after a fashion. They maybe don't do them in laboratories in the way that physicists do, but there are all sorts of ways social scientists can set up experiments, and that's some of the stuff we will be teaching you in our introductory course. So, how you make a claim, how you construct a claim, how you justify it, how you use your evidence, these things are all an important part of the political science approach. So, okay, Willy Wonka may be right here. That's Gene Wilder's Willy Wonka, by the way. Maybe not the Johnny Depp Willy Wonka you all know, but Gene Wilder's Willy Wonka may be right that you do the 101 and you won't know everything there is to know. But by the end of your degree, you'll be in a very good position to back up any argument you care to make in a political context. That's a very, very general overview of what political science is about. More specifically, we want to teach you a little bit when you first turn up about methods, political science methods. Things like, for example, game theory. Okay? Anyone tell me where this one's from? The Shall We Play a Game? Anyone? There's an old movie called War Games, actually, all the way back from the 1980s, which I am old enough to remember, and you're probably not. Anyway, the point of something like game theory is when you're in a political situation, there's a kind of field of possibilities that are open. You want to know what the people you're dealing with are likely to do. And how do you model that? Well, you take account of things like who the players are. Okay? What are the rules that the players are going according to? What do the players think is going on? What are the limits set to their actions? So in a very simple game, like this one, you've only got two options, cooperate or defect. Those are basically the rules. And the consequences or payoffs of this, well, if both players decide, in this case, to defect, it's actually better for them than if they decide to cooperate. The numbers represent years in prison they'll get in this particular case. But you'll notice there's actually an incentive for both of them here to cheat and sell the other guy out. So you're interested in people's motivations. You're interested in trying to predict what people are going to do under certain conditions. And something like game theory will give you a way of modeling that. Also, we want to teach you a little bit, just a little bit, of statistical literacy, okay? Now, statistics for a liberal arts student might seem a little bit off-putting, and we don't focus very intensely on them if you don't want to. We just ask you to understand at least the kind of bare minimum here. Because, in fact, we're surrounded by statistics all the time, okay? In the media, newspapers, TV, we're constantly being bombarded with statistical claims. 60% of people think this. 75% of people said that. Unless you understand a little bit about how to read statistics, you're not going to be in a position to weigh these claims for yourself. We want to turn you into critical thinkers who will be independent-minded citizens who can make up their own minds about things. And unless you understand how the information that's coming at you is being presented, it'll be very difficult for you to do that. So things like a normal distribution or a simple regression analysis, how these things work, what they mean, okay, how you can use them, what you can't do with them, what are the limits of this sort of thinking. These are questions we want to give you some introduction to. So this is our kind of 101 type stuff. But also, of course, we want to talk about ideas with you. We don't just want to teach you statistics and probabilities. We want to teach you about concepts as well. Okay? What is democracy? A question which is as hotly debated as what is politics? Okay? Here, democracy is the freedom to elect our own dictators. Okay? And one of the paradoxes of a democracy is that actually it could vote to abolish itself. This is true. You could have a democracy which collectively, democratically decided not to be democratic anymore. That's a logical possibility, even if it's an unlikely one. But ideas like the state, as well as democracy, what do we mean by the state? Should we include, under the notion of the state, should we include the church, for example? What's the relationship between religion and the state? What about the other components of the state? Things like the economy, school, media. How do all these things relate to one another? And then perhaps even more dramatic situations, revolution. This is a painting by Delacroix from 1830, from the French Revolution of that era. This is liberty leading the people. Under what conditions do revolutions occur? This is something that political scientists are very interested in. How do you know when a society is on the verge of becoming unstable? What are the kind of different factors that get involved in making a society reach that tipping point where people take to the streets? This is, of course, an old picture, but just from what's been happening in the last 2 or 3 years, you should all be aware this is pretty relevant stuff. If you look at what's been happening in North Africa, the Middle East, in 2011, 2012, revolution is something that is happening right now in various parts of the world. So these concepts, these ideas are just as important as the statistical methods that we want to acquaint you with. So that's the kind of introductory stuff we want to talk to you about. Next, I want to introduce the first of our subfields, comparative politics, okay? Of course, you can compare anything you like, essentially. What we're interested in is to teach you how to make meaningful comparisons. So you need to know what you're comparing. and how you're comparing it. Okay, what are the ranges that you're looking at? What are the different variables you're actually trying to compare? So we teach you to make significant comparisons. Now, comparative politics also includes what I guess we call area studies. So the countries that a lot of our faculty members are interested in doing comparisons of do happen to lie in Southeast Asia. This is natural. As a department, being where we are in the world, we have a lot of scholars who study Asian politics. It's not an exclusive focus of ours, but it's definitely one of our strengths. We have people who are experts on China, Indonesia, Japan, Korea, and other Asian countries as well, Thailand. So there's plenty of regional expertise. If you're coming to do a political science degree because you're interested in Singaporean politics, because you're interested in the politics of your part of the world, we can definitely cater for that. We can also cater for you if you're interested in the politics of the rest of the world too. But it's certainly true that our regional focus is a particular strength of the department. So we have people working on, say, the Southeast Asian region, interactions within it. A common kind of comparison you find, of course, is also between not just countries, but economic organizations, political economic federal organizations like ASEAN and the EU. It's often an area of study you find people being interested in. And of course, at the moment, with the rise of China as an independent power and the relative decline of the United States as a world power in recent years following the financial crisis, amongst other things, lots of America-China comparative work is going on. So if you're interested in these kind of regional and international comparisons, then you could spend a lot of time taking comparative politics modules. That's definitely one of our bigger fields. Our other big field is international relations. The majority of our faculty are in either comparative politics / area studies or IR. And IR is another area of particular strength for us. Traditional IR is, I suppose, about relationships between countries. The very word international is derived from a couple of Latin words, inter meaning between, and natio meaning people. So international, literally kind of between peoples, between nations. The traditional focus of IR was on relations between countries, war, and so on. And of course we do have faculty who are very interested in this. We've got Dr. Winzowski up in the audience there, does arms control. And we have other people who are interested in security issues generally. We have a member of faculty who works on civil-military relations, how armies get along with their political masters or fail to do so. That's another big area of inquiry. But international relations is a lot bigger than just this question of relationships between countries and studies of war and peace and so on. There's a lot more to be said. There are, of course, a whole host of international institutions. The United Nations is the most famous. There's a lot of talk at the moment about the need for reform in the United Nations. The world order that we have right now, institutions like the UN, the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, all of these institutions were set up post-1945. That's quite a long time ago now, 70 years or more. The world has changed a great deal. In 1945, we still lived in a kind of imperial world where Britain ruled a great portion of the planet and the United States was just an up-and-coming power. China was just falling under the rule of communism and had very little say in international affairs. Russia was, of course, still a communist country. That world has completely gone. And yet the institutional order that was established at that time is still very much with us and arguably needs to be changed. But how? So there's a huge debate about what needs to happen in the reform of international institutions. It's also very much part of international relations. And of course the things that these institutions do, the United Nations does all sorts of things, peacekeeping operations in various parts of the world, Africa in particular. You can study this sort of thing. And more broadly than that, development and environmental issues, the billowing smokestacks as a kind of symbol of the pollution that's become a global problem for us in the last few decades, the cause of global warming and so forth. A lot of students are interested in development studies. We want to be able to support that interest for you. And of course the costs of environmentalism as well. The tree here has dollars for leaves, which I thought was a nice kind of symbol of the fact that environmentalism is not cost-free. Alternative energy strategies that different countries might be pursuing have to be weighed up very carefully if we're going to see which ones make sense for us going forward. All of this stuff is also part of international relations in the big sense. Things like crime networks. The mafia is an international organization of a sort. Corporations, MNCs, multinational corporations, are part of international relations. Okay, so it's a very, very broad subject. So we take an interest in what you might call traditional IR, but we also pay attention to these new fields in international relations that are currently of great interest to a lot of scholars. And we try and cover all of this so that we have something for everybody who's drawn to that field. So next up, governance and public policy. We don't take a vocational attitude to this. If you are interested in governance and public policy, we're not directly training you to be a civil servant. Okay? We have the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy at NUS. They don't teach undergraduates, but they do offer a kind of professional stroke vocational training for master's level. We are not really doing that. We're concentrating more on the academic and the theory side of governance and public policy. I said earlier, politics is about making the rules, and then once you've made the rules, of course, you have to put them in place. That's what you're doing as a policy person. It's all very well to decide what the rules are going to be and make some laws, but unless you can get those laws executed, unless you can get people to do what they're actually supposed to be doing according to the new rules, none of it matters. So studying public policy is an important part of politics. It's closely related. It covers all sorts of things. It could cover healthcare, for example, which is a growing part of most governments' expenditures, including in Singapore. Healthcare costs only tend to go one way, and that is up. How do you allow for that, particularly when you've got an aging population? So there's some kind of sociological dimension to this as well in public policy. E-government is another area that gets talked about a lot. E-government was billed as something very revolutionary when it first started being introduced, maybe 10, 15 years ago. There's a lot of studies now of whether e-government has really lived up to that promise. Has it really transformed government's relationships with its citizens just because you can pay your taxes online? Are you really empowered as a citizen? Has it really made a major difference to you? So the importance of e-government. The theory of bureaucracy as a whole. One of the things about bureaucracies is they tend to take on a life of their own. Okay, once you set up some kind of institutional structure, that structure tends to acquire its own interests, to become a power centre in its own right. It's a very funny TV show from a few years back, Yes Minister. I don't know if you ever saw this. I don't know if it's been on Singapore TV, but the point of it was some energetic politician trying to get his decisions implemented and finding himself blocked at every turn by the civil service. Okay? Because politicians, in the end, have to rely on other people to carry out their bidding for them. If the civil service, which has much more experience usually than the individual politician, particularly in a democratic system, politician may only be in that job for a couple of years, you know, being a minister of transport or something, you may only have that job for a year or two. The civil servants have probably been there for decades. They know every trick that there is. So trying to get your policies past a civil service that doesn't want you to do what you want to do can be really tough. So you need to understand the theory of bureaucracy, how bureaucracy works as well. So that's our third subfield. It's the first of our smaller two subfields. And I'll finish now with the last one, then we can have maybe a brief Q&A. The last of our subfields is the political theory field. This is the more, I suppose, ideas-oriented field. Rodin's thinker, There's one in Singapore now. Anyone know where? Huh? Sentosa. Yep, very good. Resorts World Sentosa. They've bought one of Rodin's figures and installed it over there, so you can go to Sentosa and see this guy yourself. I just put him there to indicate that in political theory, you're not really doing social science so much anymore. The social science stuff I started off talking about is very good when it comes to giving causal explanations of things. Social science is all about how stuff happens. You've got a bunch of variables, they interact, and you look at the effects. So it's a causal model that you're dealing with in social science. In political theory, we're not dealing so much with causal social science explanation. Okay, we're more interested in historical issues, context, or perhaps also philosophical issues. So you might spend some time reading some of the great political thinkers of the past. So this is John Stuart Mill, 19th century British thinker, very important as a theorist of liberalism and utilitarianism. And we take you all the way back to ancient times, in fact, in political theory. Not just the ancient West, although we'll get you to read some Plato and some Aristotle, but also we offer courses in ancient Chinese political thought and also Islamic political thought. Okay? So again, we try and go for a genuinely global coverage. Perhaps you don't think the Western tradition is so interesting or relevant for you. Well, hopefully you will think that either Chinese or Islamic thought has some interest. So we try and teach the various great intellectual world traditions, okay? But there's also, as well as the history and philosophy part, there's also a kind of cultural studies component to political theory. We have courses on film and on music and on visual culture, which we teach, which are obviously more contemporary. If you're studying film, that's very definitely a 20th century module. And it gets you away from texts to work with images, to work with some, I guess, non-standard or non-traditional types of material. And obviously students do tend to enjoy those, as well as the more philosophical and historical modules, where we're investigating concepts like justice, for example. The nature and meaning of justice is a very big topic in political theory. But it's not all there is to it. We study, as I say, various cultural aspects of politics as well. So history, philosophy, culture, all comes under the rubric of political theory. Okay, that basically wraps up the overview of the program. And we've got about 15 minutes left for some Q&A. So I hope some of you at least are going to want to ask me a few questions. Please feel free. One, don't be shy. We've still got 15 minutes, so... Ah, great. Yes, hello. IR and, yeah. We ask you to take at least one module in each of these, but we leave it up to you how heavily you want to concentrate. If you really want to specialize, then we cater for that. We also hope that we cater to people who want to, have a rounded kind of coverage where they do several modules in each area. But as I say, if you do honours, you've got to read something like 25 modules, so you can go into quite a lot of depth in a particular field if you want to. Although you may find, of course, we only offer a certain amount of modules every year, so if you really, really go all out with international relations, you might find, you've kind of exhausted the options. But we do try and let you specialise as much as you can. And of course, if you want to do something like an honours thesis, that accounts for basically 3 modules worth of study. So there's a chance to go really into depth in a subject that you're interested in. But we ask you to have quite a high grade average before we'll let you do an honours thesis. It's something that we reserve for our kind of best students. So being able to really specialise and have an individual supervisor for a semester on a subject where you write a thesis that is up to about 10,000 words, that's kind of a reward, believe it or not. It may not sound like much of a reward, but actually it's intended to be something that we only want our really best students to do. But even for people not doing honours theses, there's still plenty of specialist opportunities. Ooh, percentage of students doing honours theses, Sham, can you tell me? About 20% of the honours year, so maybe 1 in 5, because it is a pretty demanding thing. Writing a 10,000 word piece is quite tough, and you only have a semester to do it, so it's a pretty big task. But people who do it generally find it pretty rewarding. Okay, let me ask a question. Can you guess which of the subfields I teach in? This will be interesting for me. Having presented that coverage, where do you think I am? You think I'm an Asian studies person? Okay, interesting. Anyone else? Got 1 for Asian studies? I'm a comparativist. Okay, good. Any more advances on Asian studies and comparativist? Any more guesses? Which one? Political theory. Yeah, okay, you got me. Do you know that for a fact, or is that a guess? Just a guess. It was a good guess, yeah. So I'm a political theory guy, actually. And I'm responsible for introducing stuff like the film module, and one of my recent creations, one on politics and music, which was one I ran for the first time this semester. So you'll be in a department where, you have people constantly introducing new modules, and it's exciting for that reason. We won't just be running the same stuff every semester, I can promise you that. A varied offering. Any more questions? I can't believe I answered absolutely everything you'd want to know about political theory and political science in just 20 minutes. You may. Okay, a fairly popular one is economics. I know a couple of people who've done double majors in PS and economics, although doing a double major is very demanding. If you're considering that, you've really got to have a big appetite for work. This is probably something where our office people will know more than me about which minors are popular, which majors are popular as a combo. With PS, yeah. 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 Okay, so a varied bunch. I mean, all of them go well because politics is one of those subjects that tends to have implications for pretty much everything. There's very little you could find that doesn't have a politics attached to it, whether it's the media or whether it's business or arts or whatever. Politics usually gets in there somewhere. So it's a very good subject to team up. Someone else? And of course, also I should mention you may all have noticed, but I'll give it a plug anyway. We're also hosting a whole new major inside the political science department in global studies, which is going to be coming online this academic year. So you will be able to take some courses in the new global studies major as well. Even if you decide not to actually do a major or a minor, you can still go and take courses in other departments. We do encourage you, even if you're just a PS major, to get out and see something of the world, by going to going to other departments. Of course, we encourage this quite literally as well in terms of an exchange year, or an exchange semester. One of the things that FASS as a whole really encourages is all of you going off somewhere for a year or 6 months to study at another university in another country. And that's something that a lot of our PS students definitely take advantage of, and that you should try and take advantage of as well when you join us. Yes, at the back. What careers? Well, there is not really one single career that's very obvious for you, but we place a lot of people in the civil service in various branches. As I said at the start of the talk, we have somebody in the Prime Minister's office at the moment, but we've had people go on to, people go on to Ministry of Defence, for example. It's a fairly natural progression if you're interested in something like international relations, or Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We've had people go off to Ministry of Foreign Affairs as well. I believe we've had some people go to MOE, so various departments of the civil service. Quite a few of my students have gone into teaching and are teaching at various levels in the Singapore school system. But also people do go into business kind of careers. As I said again at the start, we had the two best placements I think we made in the last couple of years have been companies like Google and PayPal. But I know people who've gone into other areas of business, like one of my former students is now a financial advisor, for example. We have people doing more creative things. One of my old students has opened an art gallery with his family as a kind of family venture that they run a commercial art gallery. So there's no overall pattern here. It's a very flexible degree because it does teach you to think critically and analytically. It'll give you skills that will apply to a whole range of jobs. And generally speaking, our students do not have problems getting jobs. I can only think of a handful of cases where people are still unemployed, say, a year after graduation. Most people find something very great. Somebody else I remember, that's right, someone else I know just gone into marketing as a career, PR, public relations as well, journalism. So people go on and do all sorts of things. So whatever you have in mind for yourself, a PS degree is a pretty good foundation for it. It's a good mix of sort of liberal arts and social science. So it gives you a very kind of decent foundation for whatever you're going to go on and do next. Any more questions? Because we're going to have to stop in a couple of minutes anyway. The next talk is nearly due. Any last minute queries? Okay, well, thank you for listening. Enjoy the next talk, and I hope you enjoy your next semester when you arrive at FASS. Thank you very much.